Boy, man, I tell you, I could not wait. I don't know if any of you guys saw that Giannis thing last night. Holy cow. That thing was wild. Those guys say, hey, I'll tell you what. Hey, you want to have drama in the NBA? That's what I'm talking about. That's old school Anthony Mason back in the day. Okay? Man, we got a lot of stuff to talk to our friend Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Boy, I know he's busy too. I told you Boomer Esiason's going to be coming on real quick in the next couple days or so. So we're going to get Boomer on. But let's go to our friend right now. And I want to start it off with that before we get into the White House stuff and all. Let's go to Marcus Hayes from the Inquirer. What you make of that last night with Halliburton's old man and Giannis last night?
I'm not super familiar with it. I saw the clips. I saw it on Twitter. My understanding is that somebody disrespected Giannis after the comeback loss, and he didn't take it very well. My interaction with Giannis has been, I'm not super impressed with him.
Wow.
I'm not taking a side here in this instance, but he's, there's no reason for Giannis's brother to be in the NBA. There's no reason for Giannis to, Milwaukee's a weird place. Indianapolis is a weird place. And he's kind of the biggest deal there, and he acts like it. He acts like royalty. And it's funny when he talks about, I believe in being humble in a loss. He's not a very humble guy.
No.
You'll remember, I think it was this time last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, when they lost in the playoffs, and he was like, well, it's not about, winning and losing. I'm like, dude, you're a professional athlete. It's only about winning and losing. So I think what we forget sometimes, and you and I have talked about this, mostly about the NFL guys, who are in an even more, a more toxic and protective bubble. These are very young men given a lot of privilege and responsibility and protection and very little accountability at a very young age, and that's how they live their lives, their entire lives. When you talk about the pomposity of a guy like Phil Simms or Boomer Esiason after their tenures, and I know I think you're gonna have Phil on later this week.
Yeah.
I was a New Yorker, and I couldn't stomach Phil on TV because he was Phil Simms.
Yeah.
He'd never been anybody but Phil Simms, and being Phil Simms in New York City with the Giants, I don't blame him. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
He could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
I think you see the result of being a Simms in Chris Simms, who is, very difficult to take sometimes. He's good at his job. He's talented, and so is Phil. My point is, I know we're a long way from Giannis here.
Yeah.
My point is, when you give young men a lot of privilege and very little accountability, they're going to act however they want. And again, they could be a lot worse. Giannis isn't a bad guy, but he isn't a very mature guy either.
Okay, so maybe that leads to this. And I don't want to pollute a question here, so I'll ask it as vague as I can. Your takeaway on the visual of the Eagles at the White House to you in what you saw with Barkley there and with Hurts not there.
Well, it wasn't just Hurts. That's the thing. Like, this was a clear message sent by Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, who, honestly, I thought was kind of a pro-Trump guy. I'm not, that's what I'd heard. And maybe Nolan Smith had extenuating circumstances and wanted to be there. I mean, this is a rabbit hole that we probably shouldn't go down because without information. But this was a clear message, I think, both ways, that the Eagles and Jeffrey Lurie, and it's not just Jeffrey Lurie. There are people in the Eagles organization who have say on this decision. The Eagles and Jeffrey Lurie have decided in this administration to recognize that Donald Trump was elected fairly and represents a significant part of the population and a significant part of their fan base. Okay, the Eagles going to the White House both in 2018 and this year isn't necessarily an endorsement or validation of a presidency that I know Jeffrey Lurie doesn't think valid or respectable. It's an opportunity for the people on the team who want to go. And it's his job. His job is to facilitate that. And he was willing to facilitate that in 2018. Trump uninvited them because not enough wanted to go. But the other side is Donald Trump knew Jalen Hurts wasn't coming. Donald Trump knew that the shade would be thrown at him that Jalen Hurts and the other athletes who didn't go threw. And he understands that it's bigger than that. The visit is bigger than that. He and his administration understand that there's no win when they uninvite someone. So anyway, it was my personal sort of take or takeaway is that Saquon Barkley, who as a college student helped host Colin Kaepernick, who Donald Trump has derided at every point he could, Colin Kaepernick, whose entire stance was to protect and make things better for people like Saquon Barkley, who sacrificed his career for that. And Saquon Barkley, during the 2020 George Floyd protests, was pro-protest and very vocal about, let's get something done. For him to do what Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, among others, have done, and choose to entertain Donald Trump and choose to be used as a prop by Donald Trump, that was disappointing to me. Now, I don't know what Saquon might have gotten out of this. I don't know if there's some sort of benefit, but Saquon Barkley can probably access whatever golf course he wants to in the United States. But he clearly wanted to be seen with the president, not only playing golf, but sitting at a table afterward at a table filled with MAGA hats, Make America Great Again hats, sitting next to Donald Trump, who was wearing one. So that to me that's an odd behavior. He hasn't explained it. I know he tweeted something, but he didn't explain those choices. And I'm not saying he has to. He can do whatever he wants. But those choices to me are at odds with the Saquon Barkley that had presented himself to that point.
I'm going to be with you, Marcus. I'm going to be as honest as I can possibly be right now, because I had a conversation with my wife about this. And if you look at the majority of the players, they were the black players that didn't want to show up because the entire offensive line showed up and Mekhi Becton. My wife heard me say that, and she goes, well, let me ask you something. If Jerome Brown and Michael Irvin said that they were offended and didn't want to go, what would you do? And I said,
those are former teammates of yours.
Yes. And
right.
I said, if they felt that way, I would probably not go, because I love those guys. I had Michael on last Friday. I've known the man 40 years. He's one of my closest friends. And she goes, there's no way you would have went. And so I'll ask you, would you have gone?
No, absolutely not. There literally is no sports journalist in America who has written more negatively about Donald Trump, his administration, the people who in 2015 and 2016 were saying the things that I'm saying about him, have said about him for the past decade. They were saying these things about Donald Trump as Republican candidates. He's gotten worse. He's a worse person now. He's proved him. I will say this: he's very consistent. but he's proved himself to be a horrible person and a terrible American. And the same people that were saying this about him in 15 and 16 to retain their power, people like Rubio and Cruz and folks like that, are bending their knee to him. And they know that what they're saying isn't true. So to answer your question, and this is not, some soapbox I've just stepped up on.
No.
I've been saying this. There's a guy here named Dom Giordano who does a very conservative radio show on 1210, a local AM station here. During the campaign, it might have been during the primary, I was on his show, probably talking about Kaepernick and stuff like that. And, I called Donald Trump a liar and a racist. Now, he's an adjudicated racist, and he's a serial liar. I mean, the New York Times in 2019 had their whole front page, just Donald Trump lies. So to be in the same place with him that I don't have to be to choose to be there is something I find just incomprehensible. If I had to go, if it's an assignment, like I wasn't assigned to go to the White House, I actually declined to go to the White House in 2018. I'm still on a email list, but I told them I don't want to go. If someone else wants to go, thank you for the opportunity, my bosses, but I don't want to go. But I was vetted and given a pass. So, no, I would never put myself in a situation to entertain Donald Trump. I will say this though. Here's an example of the compromise that I have to make, right? I believe Trump Bedminster in New Jersey hosted the 2016 U.S. Women's Open, and I had to cover it. Part of covering major golf, big golf events, is going to the course and, if you want, playing the course. And I know that sounds like a great perk, and it is. It's wonderful. I got to play Aronimink 2 weeks ago, and I got to play cricket this past week. Those are both going to be places that host events. But if you're a golf writer, it's very, very difficult to understand what you're covering if you aren't really familiar with the course. I mean, I actually won the lottery my first year covering the Masters, so I got to play Augusta National after Adam Scott won the Masters.
That's crazy great.
It's crazy. It's wonderful, but they don't offer that media day access that the other tournaments do. But I got to play Pinehurst number 2. I got to play Marriott. I got to play Shinnecock. I got to play all these great courses. But it's a valid exercise in that you understand the course better, especially a place like Aronimink or cricket, which have been redesigned over the past, in the last 10 or 12 years. So it's a real opportunity to do that. So here I am talking to Dom Giordano this way while playing Donald Trump's course, Bedminster. And I've told people this for the last 10 years. With the exception of Doral, which is not very well maintained, it is not nearly as great as its reputation.
It used to be.
Well, I don't like the course. Like, I don't think it's a very good course, especially
it's
the Blue Monster and the Silver Fox. It's just not good. But I've told people for the last. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
I've told people this for years that if Donald Trump only created golf courses, he'd be a great American. His golf courses are spectacular. I'm gonna have to put you on pause just for a second, okay?
Okay. All right. All good. So we're gonna go on pause here for a second. This is one of the reasons that we get people with opposing and different views here. I love this. And I really did get asked this question by my wife last night. My wife goes like this. She goes, I heard what you said. And my wife actually said, I respect what you said. She goes, but what if Michael Irvin came to you and said, I don't want you to go? Would you go? And I said, no, I wouldn't. And of course, it's somebody that I love. Jerome came to me and said, Dan, I want you to stand with us. I would. Because those are people that I love. I wouldn't like it. And I would make it very clear and tell them that I think we should all be there. But I'll give you guys a story real quick here. So we were at an oak tree during training camp. And I walked in to buy a pair of jeans. This was in Thousand Oaks. And I walked up to the cashier and I bought my jeans, gave him a credit card, left. Michael went up. Guy goes, "Can I see some ID?" 3 forms of ID and a credit card. Mike looked at me and I went, "You didn't ask me for that." And I got offended there because I felt insulted for my teammate and my friend. And I said, give me. I turned the pants back in and I said, "I don't want to buy anything out of this place." I never went back to an oak tree ever again because of that. All right. So I want to follow up here. Let's bring Marcus back up here. And thanks for hanging in here with us here, Marcus. So do you think there's going to be any collateral damage, in your opinion, to Barkley and how half the Philadelphia Eagle fan base will see him? Do you think he can recover from this?
Honestly, I think.
Or does it matter? Or does it matter?
People are kind of tired of it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? People are kind of tired of the debate. I mean, one of the things that happens every time I write about politics, but especially Trump, is I get this big email response. Not necessarily Twitter, but email. I probably had 250 emails in the last two and a half days, right?
Over your column.
About this column and about the, addressing it. I'd say like 125, like half of them were like, "Good job," whatever, whatever. That's a departure. Most people who think "good job" don't email you. But a lot of people are very sort of outraged at what's happened over the last decade with Trump. About 50 of them, maybe 75, were kind of like, "We hate you, we're Trumpers, you're horrible," whatever. And then about, I don't know, what's left, 50? I'd say about 50 of them were like, it does matter, Saquon, what Saquon thinks and says does matter. Or we don't care. Why bother? But I think the overwhelming feeling is Donald Trump has shown himself to be what he is. He's a convicted felon. There is no argument about his legitimacy as a leader. He's in it for the grift. He's in it for the money. If you voted for him, and you know that, all this other stuff is fake. The stuff he's doing is illegal, and you're fine with that. That's what you voted for. And I think people who are sort of anti-Trump, or especially Republicans who feel betrayed by Trump, I think they're just kind of like, "All right, it's just one more thing. I'm going to have to live with it." And that was kind of the gist of my column. My column was not like, "Oh my God, this is something Saquon Barkley will never get over because he lives in liberal Philadelphia." And it wasn't, I hate Saquon Barkley now, and you should too. The column was kind of like, Saquon Barkley did something that I didn't really care about. Jalen Hurts did something I didn't really care about. Steph Curry in 2017 was going to do something I didn't really care about. And the Eagles in 2018 were going to do something I didn't really care about. And most people don't care about this. People forget in 1991, Jesse Jackson told Michael Jordan not to go to George Bush's White House. And Michael Jordan snubbed him and let everybody know he was gambling and playing golf. Yeah. So these things, I mean, Tim Thomas, the goalie for the Bruins, wouldn't visit Obama because he's a libertarian. These things blow over very quickly. Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, for as much as he represents the NFL, and Saquon Barkley as much as he represents, Philadelphia, it's not that big a deal. It's just not that big a deal.
So media people make more of it than like what you're saying here, because for me, like
social media people.
Fair enough. social media because got to admit here, right, Marcus? When I'm sitting down at Lincoln Financial, I'm not doing this. Hey, you Republican or you Democrat? Great. Hey, who are you rooting for? I'm going to sit down and I'm going to eat my hamburger, drink my beer, and I'm going to root the Eagles on it.
Well,
right?
You're old enough to remember when religion was the thing that people, the thing that held America together. I don't think that's great. I'm not a big religious guy, and I think I have huge problems with all sorts of churches. And my father and grandfather were Baptist preachers, so you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes with the institutions of religion. But it served a purpose of bringing communities together. That's what sports does now, especially football, because football it's the sport for idiots. You know, it's a very complex sport, but you don't have to understand a lot about it to enjoy it. And you can watch it drunk. And it's easy to bet.
Wait, so it's not quite chess, it's checkers, right?
Well, football, a lot of football fans think baseball is boring, which is hilarious because football has maybe 7 or 8 significant plays in a 60 minutes of play that takes 3.5 hours. That's the definition of boredom. Every single there's no timeout in baseball, really. Especially now with the pitch clock. You get 3 hours of pretty much action. At least, you get 60 minutes of football. You get at least 2 hours of baseball. Yeah. Now it's not, it's home runs and it's triples and it's doubles and stealing bases. So football's boring and it's kind of dumb. It's kind of simplistic compared to other sports. I mean, you were good at it. How hard can it be?
Oh my God! That's a last one here. This is why I love you.
But football is what brings America together. It really is.
All right. Well, let me ask you.
Here's the proof. Nothing has been as divisive in America than Colin Kaepernick in the last 25, 30 years.
Absolutely.
Football ratings and football attendance did not move. No matter which way you felt about it, it did not change.
Absolutely. Last one here for you. What was your takeaway on the Shadour Sanders story?
Well, that's interesting you should say it. So in Philadelphia, we're talking a lot about Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. Nationally, all they're talking about is Shadour Sanders. The Eagles not going to the White House is a very Philadelphia thing, especially because Philadelphia, some Eagles not going to the White House and Saquon Barkley embracing it is a very Philadelphia thing, in part because Philadelphia is so, generally liberal. Outside of Philadelphia, it's not that big a deal.
Hey, no one cares.
Shadour Sanders dropping in the draft is a big deal. I will say this. Before the draft, I don't do a lot of pre-draft stuff. I don't do a lot of research. I don't talk to the people that I normally talk. I talk to a lot of people about before free agency, but I don't.
So you're not a mock draft guy.
Oh no, I'll do a mock draft every once in a while. I'll do it a week before, once all the scuttlebutt's out. And I used to go to the Senior Bowl every year. I mean, when I was covering the team, I would go to the Senior Bowl. I would go, I would go to workouts. I would do everything I could. There's a guy named Joel Bushbaum. Used to work out of an apartment in New York, and every year he would put together a paperback draft guide. And forget about Mel Kiper or whoever. This guy was the best ever. He created the industry. So, but no, I've been a draftnik, a lot in my life. And going to the Senior Bowl, especially when I went, you would get every single coach, assistant coach, and GM at your elbow that week. So. That said, the people that I talk to mostly about free agency because the draft, there's so much out there available with the draft. But what I did hear about the quarterbacks this year is that Shadour Sanders isn't a very good quarterback. He's a project.
That's what
He's like Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean he can't play, but he doesn't have a big arm. He's not a great athlete. He's not a big guy. So there are a lot of reasons to avoid that type of quarterback. The reason Shadour Sanders, Deion has, Deion Sanders. He is the greatest marketer since Barnum and since P.T. Barnum.
Tremendous.
He is the only reason. I should say that he's the main reason cornerbacks get paid, because he not only did he impact the game, he told everybody, I'm going to impact the game, and he educated people on how he impacts the game. He takes away half the field. He was as good as advertised. But Deion knows that being as good as advertised versus being advertised, they're two very different things.
Correct.
He knows Shadour is not a very good quarterback at the NFL level now, but he can't say that. And he's a spectacular marketer. He is fearless and he is shameless, which I hope my dad would be. Shadour Sanders went where he should go. And at the beginning, I was talking about people I talked to. Everybody I talked to thought that it would be a huge mistake for him to be a day one or day two guy, where you could get a player who could help you right now and sign a second contract. Shadour Sanders might not be a football player in 3 years.
I'm not even sure. I mean, are the Browns going to carry 4 quarterbacks?
Well, that's the thing. Like, if Shadour Sanders gets cut, he's probably going to be on the Browns practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, nobody keeps 4 QBs on the roster. I mean, so
right. So if he gets cut, if he's the Browns' 4th quarterback, he gets cut, he's going to clear waivers, because you already have your practice squad 4th quarterback.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to teach Shadour Sanders how to be your practice squad 4th quarterback with him missing all the offseason and preseason stuff. So the Browns drafted him. He's a draft and stash. I don't know enough about Shadour Sanders to tell you whether or not he has the football IQ, the arm strength, the athleticism, all that sort of stuff to become a backup or a starter one day. But I do know that he is certainly not worth the draft capital of a day 1 or day 2 pick to bring him into your building and expect him to be a backup immediately.
So I'm going to leave you with this here. I'm hoping that I one-up you here. Now, I have played Olympic. I've played Wingfoot. And I've played Riviera. And I've played Baltusrol. And I've played Cherry Hill. Have you played? I mean, I loved all them courses you play, because my ultimate dream is to play all of the U.S. Open golf courses. That's one thing that I've always wanted to do, is play all the, I played the PGA National. That was the 75 championship that Nicklaus won his final PGA championship. I've played that before as well. NFL holds events on it, but what's your favorite golf course you played on?
Well, I'm going to get.
Watch, it's a Trump course.
No. I will say Bedminster is great. Like, it's one of the 20 best golf courses I've played. It's really good. I would love to be a member there just to play the course. Like John Smoltz is a member there. He doesn't live in New Jersey. It's that good a course. Yeah. So Mike Davis, the USGA former president, is a member, a charter member at Trump Bedminster. I played Pine Valley. So that's where it's not my favorite course. My favorite course I've ever played. There's a place in Scotland called North Berwick. It's like Berwick, PA, but it's pronounced Berwick over there. They have a DP World Tour event in that town, but not at the North Berwick course. It's a resort course that they have the event at. It's so good that the PGA or the DP World Tour players, the Americans, and the commentators go to that tournament a day early to play the public North Berwick course. My buddy and I took a trip to Scotland years ago, and we had prepaid for all of our rounds. And on the second to last day, we played North Berwick. Back then, we were walking 18 twice. We were walking 36 holes a day. We canceled our round for the final day at a different place to play North Berwick again twice. That's how good. It was like $500 wasted, or $500. Like, we already spent the money, got it, and then we had to pay more to play North Berwick. So it was like, between us, it was like $500, which is a lot in 2010. That's the best golf course, and my favorite golf course I've ever played.
Man, that's great to hear. I love to hear that, man, because I always talk to Merrill Reese about, because he's a member. I think it's over at Congressional.
No, he's at Marion.
Marion, I'm sorry. Marion, that's right. He's over there at Marion. And I always tell him, I go, how's that first hole look? Because that's supposed to be one of the greatest looking golf holes of all time. And I go, have you ever been into like the locker in there, the champions
Oh,
locker?
sure. Well, that was it was a weird and great experience. When Marion hosted the 2013 U.S. Open, I think
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
there's a media day, and we played. It was really rainy, but we were given access to their little tin locker room
Yes.
and I think I used one of the locker I used because all the lockers are taken. I think I used one of the Bucks lockers, for the family that owns the Phillies.
Yeah.
I think I used one of their lockers, and it was really kind of it was a kind of how the other half lives moment experience. But yeah, it's an interesting place. It's really funny to see it host a U.S. Open because Aronimink, which isn't quite big enough to host a U.S. Open, struggled. Marion has 2 courses, so it gets by. But the actual facilities that aren't temporary, the permanent facilities, are tiny. So it's interesting, and I cover a lot of golf. I've probably covered 50 to 100 golf tournaments in my career, and it's a big production. Like Augusta National has a permanent media center that is probably the size of the NovaCare.
I've been there. You have
Yeah.
to wear golf shoes. If you're going to walk around, you have to wear golf shoes. Back then, at least, they told us that we couldn't walk around with sneakers. This was like 20 years ago.
Right.
That I went, that I had to wear golf shoes around, and I couldn't wear shoes
Well, it's
or
dangerous.
they wouldn't allow you on the course.
It's dangerous. They changed that policy since I've been going, but it's dangerous because the pine straw and you walk across some of the fairways. It's slippery. It's such a pristine place. It can be like walking on linoleum. Like walking on tile.
Yep, absolutely. Marcus, it is always a great conversation with you. Hit them straight. I appreciate you finding time for me, and thank you very much, my good friend.
All right, thank you, Dan.
You got it. That is Marcus Hayes. I love that. And I'll tell you why we love that. Because what we do here is we give different opinions. We have both sides of the aisle, and we have people that have their opinion, our opinion, and your opinion. That's what this is, man. Fantastic. Okay? Fantastic. I mean, that's what this is about here. I think here in a couple seconds, let me set something up here for a second. I want to make sure I'm clear here on something. My wife asked again, anytime my wife wants me to come correct on something, she goes, "Do you believe that Jalen Hurts should have went to the White House?" And I promised myself I wasn't going to go here. But since Marcus had such a strong statement, I didn't think we were really going to go down that lane. I wasn't planning on it. I thought, I said yes. And my wife goes, because I've heard you. And listen, my wife will always, and she goes, if Michael Irvin felt offended about something, what would you do? Would you stand with him? And I go, of course I would. You know this. Well, how do you think some of the players on the Eagles feel? And I said, Trump's different. Because I think what Trump brings out in you is it's not about him. It's about your self-beliefs. Do you want other people telling you how to live your life? I think sometimes I fall in that lane. Maybe sometimes it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has more to do with me. I don't like people telling me how to think. You know how some of you think he's a scumbag? Well, I don't like you telling me to think and follow along in a lane or in an aisle or in a row that I have to think like you. So it's more about me and how I feel. Trump represents to me, I'm not going to let you tell me how to think. What about his policies? Man, I couldn't name 5 of them. But I know what I could name. Don't tell me how to think. I want to think for myself. I want to pick my friends. I want to pick my issues. And I want to live under my own roof. That's what he represents to me. I'm not talking about character here. I'm talking about how people look and how people that never met him say those things. And so I kind of thought about it, and I said, I couldn't name 5 policies. Okay? And I can pick and choose how I want to live my life. That's what I think that guy truly represents to me. And that's what Marcus looks at him as. And I believe me, those are strong opinions. I love people also. You know why I love Marcus? I love Marcus's strong opinion. I love people with strong opinions. Those are people with conviction. Saquon Barkley has conviction. Jalen Hurts has conviction. No wonder the Eagles are good. No wonder they're good. They're good because the same shit that ran my locker room. Dude, Michael Irvin believed in Louis Farrakhan. I didn't even know who the fuck he was. I started going, I'm like, yeah, that guy's an awful racist. Well, you don't know his teachings. And I looked at him and said, you're right, I don't. Then how could you call him that? And I was like, you're right. You taking a shot at my faith and my beliefs? No, I'm not really. Okay. That's the difference between me and many of you. I'm going to support my teammate. I'm not going to support your beliefs. That's how I see it. I don't have to support your beliefs, but I'm going to support you because you're my teammate. And if I choose to go to the White House or I don't, respect my decision. Okay. That's why my main argument is that you can dictate someone's feelings. You can't dictate someone's feelings. You call me a liberal for saying that. I understand both sides. Prince, you're right. You're right, Prince. You're right. Again, where I come from with this is more, don't tell me how to think, don't tell me how to live. If I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. I'm not failing following you. I'm not a follower. I'm not a follower. I've never been. And I really don't like followers. Okay? And I agree with him. I don't think this is going to have any impact whatsoever on the Eagles. I think taking the blowtorch to that defense is going to have a little bit more of an impact. What are you doing? Hey, it's funny, man. Who's that?